Roe v. Wade's demise forced companies to grapple with healthcare plans, employee privacy, and more. Joey, in some of your circles with the leaders that you work with, and I know you have a lot of folks that you know in the small business space, I have to imagine that this is just a topic on everybody's mind. Am I right?
It is, and I think people are trying to pick through the pieces of what it now means to be in a state where this topic is legal and states where abortions are illegal, and what that means for their employees, what it means for their health plans, and quite frankly, um, people are concerned about if this political or I guess judicial ruling um, may have an impact on their talent and if they wish to stay at their employer or transfer to another state where it may be more of a safe haven. So here in Maryland, abortion is legal at the state level, and I think I just saw that the governor issued sort of a safe haven kind of message. Um, but whether you're in a state where it's safe haven or not, it's definitely top of mind, and you need to be paying attention to what it could mean for your premiums, what it might mean for employee privacy, and even some of the things that I think Summer you're seeing with employers and how they're proactively responding to this, and how healthcare providers, not healthcare providers, but health insurance agencies are responding to this.
Absolutely. One of the things that really stood out to me was that the day after the ruling came out, just the number of inquiries that we were seeing on the consulting team very much felt like the first few days when like the COVID stay at home orders went into effect and companies were kind of in that state of panic of, oh my gosh, what does this mean for us? What do we do? How do we respond? And what do we say? So it was a bit of kind of treat on the HR side, trying to help small businesses and leaders that we support kind of come up with their plan to respond to all of the questions that they were suddenly being flooded with. And I think one of the first decisions that small companies, if they haven't already, need to be thinking about is, will they have an official position on this? We've kind of discussed that in prior episodes, like the pros and cons of doing that for these sensitive issues. And the majority of small businesses that I've had these conversations with are actually taking kind of a middle of the road position because they recognize that there isn't really like a strong right, or I should say correct way to approach this, and instead that kind of middle of the road and recognizing they may have employees that are on each side is the best approach. But when it comes to actually supporting team members that are in states where they can no longer legally obtain these services, they're asking the questions like, okay, well, what does that mean for our health plan? And what are our options? And so I kind of wanted to talk through a few of those because I think those are the real questions and answers that people are looking for. So the number one recommendation that I have is to talk to your health plan and or your health broker to see if the current plan that's in place has the option for a travel rider. It's not available for all plans. It's dependent on the carrier and also the size of the plan. But that is the easiest way to actually provide access because something that some people may not know is that there is already an existing travel rider for some other services. So say, Joey, if you needed to go obtain a procedure and you weren't able to receive those services in your immediate area, that your health plan does actually have some coverage for you to go out of area to receive those. So that's kind of the first option that a lot of companies are looking at. But Joey, what have you heard in the news about companies that are just saying, hey, like we're just going to go ahead and pay for it. Don't worry about it. Like we're going to take care of your travel.
Yeah, I won't mention any of the names of the companies. Now, if they wish to be sponsors of the show, then then I can mention their names. But I'm seeing companies out there just saying, "Hey, you know what, employees, we don't want you to worry about this at all. We don't want this to be a concern to your health or to your productivity, and so we are just going to proactively invest in reimbursing you for your travel, your accommodations, whatever the case may be. Um, and not all companies are in a position to do that, but I think for those who are, it will go a long way in creating a positive workplace culture from a standpoint of caring for your employees. We're kind of, at least for our show and this discussion, we're past the question of whether or not it should be repealed. Now we're in the throes of it has, and so what do we do now? And so companies are stepping up to the plate and saying, all right, we're going to go ahead and just absorb that cost or reimburse you for those costs.
Yes, the one thing that I find really interesting about that, Joey, is that we have seen a lot of companies come forward and make that statement, but operationally, it's not fully in effect. And the reason being is that because there's a lot of issues, and I wanted to talk about those just pretty briefly, that are yet to be determined. They haven't actually been tried in the legal system to truly understand administrative standpoint, is actually going to work. So companies who are saying we're going to go ahead and cover it, some of the issues, of course, are with privacy. Team members having to come forward to obtain this reimbursement. There's a lot of protection around medical data, but one of the potential concerns that's actually mentioned in this article is what they're calling the chilling effect. So the idea that if somebody comes forward to seek those benefits, will they be adversely impacted, by that being kind of common knowledge within the company? It's not common that a company would know of, like, say, medical procedures or other items that somebody may be experiencing. Aside from that, there's the taxation issues. Just to talk about those really high level, receiving reimbursement for medical services, is still kind of unclear what's going to be considered an eligible expense, meaning that it's not taxable, and then vice versa. And then the last one that actually worries me the most, and this is where a lot of companies are kind of sitting and waiting to see what's going to happen, is there's kind of two pieces. One is if a company is able to obtain the travel coverage through their insurance, the insurance company is actually making them sign an indemnification agreement.
And for those listening who don't know the like big legal words like indemnification, that basically means like you can't hold us liable for what happens. If something happens, we aren't responsible.
Right. Thanks for that. Because the last piece on this, and why that's a concern, is because for states, for example, uh, Texas has been very clear in saying that anyone who is aiding and abetting um, in a state like Texas can put themselves in some sort of legal trouble because they're breaking the law. So if you're a business, what is your responsibility there? And if you're an insurance company, there's that potential exposure. These are just things that still have yet to be fully vetted. And those are some of the major concerns with uh, trying to put some of these solutions in place.
I definitely agree that these are scary things to think about. Um, you're already trying to make a determination about your health and safety, and then now thinking about am I doing so illegally is very much an interesting aspect. I'm trying to pull up the state where the woman was driving, and she was pregnant, and she oh yeah, it was Texas. That's what I thought, but I didn't want to be wrong. So a woman in Texas was driving in an HOV lane, and she was pregnant, and the police officer pulled her over and said, "Ma'am, you're the only one in the car." She said, "Actually, I'm not. I've got a fetus. Uh, I am not alone. I There are two people in this car." So, that is just one indication of how much friction there will be to getting an understanding of what's considered legal, what's not considered legal, so on and so forth. So I just thought that that was a pretty interesting challenge to the law because I mean, technically she's right, right? If such is the case. So the big thing I think for us to think about is, if you're listening or watching this and you are a people manager, you run a business, um, and you're not a human resources pro and you're not an attorney, uh, all of this is likely to go. All of this is likely to challenge your thinking. And I always say, you can't trust your gut or Google when it comes to managing people issues. And this is definitely one where you want to pull some help in the room. And so I don't even want to necessarily be selfish here and say recommend us, but Summer, what type of support do you think a business should have in coming to these decisions around policies? Like what type of attorneys, what type of medical professionals, if any? What do you think?
Well, I would say it definitely varies by state. And I know that that complicates matters. I mean, certainly for those that are in states where they don't have employees that are impacted by this and they don't anticipate in the future, then, I think it's little to none. But for those that definitely have employees in states where access is limited or restricted, I think there's a couple of ways to approach it. Certainly we're always happy to have the conversations, even if it's just on kind of like a short engagement about how to develop a strategy around this, but with with legal counsel support, and that's simply because there are very complicated matters that even they don't know the answers to, but as some of the details start to evolve, I think they will be in the best position to say, here are the options, here are the legal risks,